Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Suki Lee. I'm working at Korea Marine Environment Management Corporation, or COEM. Since 2017, the COEM has been leading the blue carbon research in Korea, and I'm in charge of that project. This side event is organized by Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries of the Republic of Korea and the Coordinating Ministry for Maritime Affairs and Investment of the Republic of Indonesia and COEM. And I'm very honored to participate in this important event as a moderator with excellent speakers and panelists. Blue carbon is currently gaining more attraction as beneficial option for climate change mitigation as well as adaptation in ocean sector. And Korea and Indonesia have prepared this event as the first step to cooperate responding to climate change through blue carbon. The first objective of this event is to share the national policies to link blue carbon into climate change response in Korea, Indonesia. And based on this information, we will talk about how to strengthen the role of blue carbon in the NDCs as well as carbon neutrality. The policy dialogue will continue after 3 informative presentations from Korea and Indonesia. Now we start the event. For this event, Your Excellency, Mr. Sung Hyuk-moon, the Minister of Oceans and Fisheries of the Republic of Korea, will deliver his welcome address in a video.
Excellencies and distinguished participants, greetings from the Republic of Korea. I'd like to start by extending my warmest welcome to all of you. The tremendous challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic have not yet loosened the grip. So I can only imagine how difficult it must have been for the organizing team to put together this side event. In this regard, I'd like to take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to the Honorable Minister, Mr. Luhut Binsar Panjaitan, and the Deputy Minister, Ms. Nani Hendiarty, of the Coordinating Ministry for Maritime Affairs and Investment of Indonesia, Mr. Joko Taimlander, from the Secretariat of the Convention on Wetlands, Professor Mr. Kwon Bong-oh at Kunsan National University, and all participants from around the globe. Distinguished participants, the Republic of Korea has declared its commitment to achieving carbon neutrality by 2050 and set up an ambitious goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 40% from the 2018 level by 2030. In line with this nationally determined contribution and 2050 carbon neutrality roadmap, the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries of Korea aims at cutting greenhouse gas emissions in the oceans and fisheries sector by 58.5% by 2030. We are working on a wide range of policy tools to support the accomplishment of these ambitious objectives. The ministry will not rest on low carbon ships and even push forward for developing and promoting ships that burn zero carbon fuels such as hydrogen and ammonia, which will contribute to decarbonization of maritime transport. High efficiency, low carbon approaches will also be taken to the fisheries sector, and this will include the development of eco-friendly fishing vessels combined with a wider use of energy-efficient equipment in fish farms, considerable amounts of which will be charged by solar and small hydropowers. On top of these tools are ocean-based carbon sinks. internationally recognized assessments, including that of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, indicate that the ocean has taken up between 20 to 30% of human-induced CO2 emissions. We now call the carbon stored in coastal and marine ecosystem blue carbon, acknowledging the importance of the implementation of the no backsliding principle of the Paris Agreement and to contribute to the significant reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. The Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries considers employing globally recognized blue carbons, such as tidal flats, as the core weapons in the fight against the greenhouse gas emissions. And thus today, Korea and Indonesia have joined hands together to spread the word on the importance of oceans and nature-based solutions to address climate change. With our eyes on the capacity and the potential of the blue carbon, Korea and Indonesia will work closely together and come up with strategies to achieve the 2050 carbon neutrality and even strengthen the 2030 nationally determined contribution. Furthermore, we'll make concerted efforts to raise awareness both home and abroad for sustainable and wider use of the blue carbon. Distinguished participants, I'm very pleased and excited that the two-day event provides the opportunity for Korea and Indonesia to show the blueprint of a bright future to the world, which will be realized through the close cooperation between the two countries. I thank all those advisors with keen interest and attention in tackling climate change. I'd like to count on your continued support and robust participation in the blue recovery through oceans. Before I close, I'd also appreciate your close attention to the policy dialogue on the blue carbon for carbon neutrality that is going to get started very soon. I believe that it will be very interesting, informative, and insightful. Again, I'd like to express my deepest gratitude to all of you for your kind assistance and very welcome presence. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister.
Excellencies and distinguished participants.
Next, Your Excellencies, Mr. Luhut Binsar Panjaitan, the Coordinating Minister for Maritime Affairs and Investment of the Republic of Indonesia, will deliver his congratulatory remarks in a video.
His Excellency Minister Moon Seong Hyok, His Excellency Mr. Wahyu Sakti Trenggono, distinguished speakers, moderators, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to apologize for not joining this talk so in person due to my duty to accompany my President. This event is joint talk show between the Coordinating Minister for Maritime Affairs and Investment of the Republic of Indonesia and the Minister of Ocean Fisheries of the Republic of Korea. Last 2 weeks, I have met Minister Moon Seong Hyok in Jakarta, and we share some insightful thoughts for our future collaboration. And one of the topics was about the blue carbon cooperation. We may know in COP26 Glasgow at this moment, people all around the world will gather in a conference to discuss and find a solution to keep the climate under 2 degrees. We have passed 1 degree Celsius now, and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has warned that global temperatures need to be kept from rising by more than 1.5 degrees Celsius. Indonesia also strives to elevate the net zero ambition by 2060 or sooner, and one of the sector to contribute is from the pollution sectors, including mangrove and peatland. The pollution sector will reach negative emission or net sink by 2030. Mapping and utilizing the blue carbon ecosystem are expected to reduce the temperature by 2050. Indonesia has submitted the updated national determined contribution and the long-term strategy on low carbon and climate resilience 2050 to the Secretariat of UNFCCC. The updated NDC reflects the progression beyond existing NDC as well as new elements including for ocean. The preparation of the NDC consider the Sustainable Development Goals and goals on taking urgent action to combat climate change and its impact, such as access to affordable, reliable, and renewable energy for all, and sustainable use of the ocean, seas, and marine resources. As an archipelagic country, Indonesia is blessed with the abundance of natural capital and hosts mega marine biodiversity. We have the largest coastal blue carbon ecosystem of mangrove and seagrass, as well as coral reef on Earth. Indonesia blue carbon ecosystem holds around 75 to 80% of the world's carbon credit, which means we have economic potential from our ecosystem. To extend the extent of Indonesia blue carbon ecosystem enable the countries to play a significant role in global climate mitigation and adaptation effort because on those ecosystems. But while this ecosystem store and sequester this appropriate amounts of carbon and provide an array of other valuable ecosystem services such as coastal protection and biodiversity, they are under threat through activities such as conversion to aquaculture ponds or oil palm plantation, logging for timber, and coral and urbanization. Moreover, most of our people live in the coastal area and earn their living from the ocean. The impacts of climate change influence their ability to endure from extreme weather, sea level rise, and other disasters. The government of Indonesia has made some strategies and programs to build climate and coastal resilience for coastal communities. Indonesia has attempted several efforts to conserve and rehabilitate the blue carbon ecosystem. For example, the mangrove rehabilitation program, it will be the greatest rehabilitation program in the world that covers 600,000 hectares of critical and land areas until 2024. Aside from government, the pentahelix support are from private sector, strategic international partners, and international funding institution. Indonesia has also Coral Reef Garden program, which is a national coral reef restoration program that integrates both scientific and socio-economic approaches to promote sustainable resources such through ecotourism. The coral reef is not the main part of the blue carbon ecosystem, but its role is very important to buffer the blue carbon ecosystem as well as to support food security, livelihood, and resilience of coastal communities. To this end, I wish to talk so could introduce to global audience how to manage the blue carbon ecosystem and at the same time seek broader international support and collaboration support from multinational funding institutions and especially future cooperation with the government of the Republic of Indonesia. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And as a last distinguished guest, Your Excellency, the Professor Sun Jin-yoon, the 2050 Carbon Neutrality Commission from of the Republic of Korea will be here in person to give us her keynote speech. Please welcome Chair Yoon.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am Yoon Soon-jin, co-chairperson of the 2050 Carbon Neutrality Commission of Korea. First of all, I'm very pleased to deliver a keynote speech here today at a platform for communication between Korea and Indonesia on the occasion of further discussion in response to climate crisis in the field of ocean as well as blue carbon, under the theme of implication of raising NDC target and expanding the scope of carbon sinks. Before starting, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to Deputy Minister Song Sang-gun and Secretary Minister Nani Hendiarty for organizing today's event. I sincerely feel blessed to be here at COP26 again in 2 years' time, realizing how valuable everyday life was before the COVID-19 pandemic. At the same time, I recognize the grave responsibility in that the future generations might face the risk of losing such previous daily life unless the current generation fully tackles the pending issue of climate crisis. Against such a backdrop, the IPCC provides new time estimates which advances 10 years to the previous estimate for crossing the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold. Such decision made by the IPCC states that the Earth is becoming hotter at an unexpanded pace. Across the globe, including Europe, North America, and Asia, extreme climate conditions, heavy rainfall, wildfire, and landslide have frequently taken place in every part of the world. I believe that immediate actions for carbon neutrality must be taken by all of us. In this regard, of last year, 2020, the Republic of Korea declared its 2050 carbon neutrality and successfully legalized the Framework Act on Carbon Neutrality and Green Growth. In addition, 2050 Carbon Neutrality Commission was inaugurated, keeping tabs for quick transition toward a carbon neutral society in every aspect of social and economic landscape. Korea rearranged its 2030 NDC target to a challenging level, which is a step that we must take to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. Korea also officially claimed its decision to reduce 40% of greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 compared to the total emissions of 2018. Despite such ambitious target, given that Korea is heavily dependent on energy-intensive and highly greenhouse emitting manufacturing industry and comparatively short period of time to go carbon neutral by 2050 after its peak time of emissions in 2018, it could be stated that Korea consequently needs to achieve higher level of annual reduction compared to its neighboring developed countries. Yet, the Korean government stays determined to upgrade its 2030 NDC from 26.3% to 40% from its 2018 emissions, as it recognized the urgency of climate crisis. With that said, more and more activities to observe carbon emitted as well as to reduce emissions have become crucial. As of 2018, 4,560 tons of carbon were observed in Korea, which account for 6.3% of the total carbon emissions of the country through the forest. However, the forest capacity as carbon sinks has constantly decreased since 2008. Thus, it is time to discover new carbon sinks via various efforts, in addition to more aggressive reduction activities. In that sense, blue carbon can become a breakthrough in discovering new absorption sources. In recent times, the ocean has garnered the global attention as a response mechanism to climate crisis, followed by a number of studies on blue carbon. Indonesia is home to the world's largest mangroves, whereas Korea has the world's top 5 tidal flats. The two countries certainly benefit one another in achieving carbon neutrality via expanding the scope of bilateral cooperation on blue carbon. Until today, internationally recognized blue carbons are mangroves, slat marshes, and seaweeds, which contain carbon in plant stems or land via photosynthesis. In this regard, cooperative actions are required to take place so that non-vegetative tidal flats and sea forests shall be recognized as a source of blue carbon at the international level. I sincerely hope that today's event serves as a constructive discussion to enhance the bilateral cooperation of the two nations in response to the partnership on blue carbon, as well as to the expansion of the ocean's role under the issue of climate crisis. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chair. And now we will mainly start our presentation session. And I'd like to invite our first speaker, the Deputy Minister Sang-Keun-song. And he is a Deputy Minister for Marine Policy Office of the Republic of Korea, and he will deliver NDC and blue carbon strategy in Korea. Deputy Minister Song, you have the podium.
Ms. Yoon Sun-jin, the chairperson of Presidential Committee on Carbon Neutrality. Ms. Nani Henderati, the Deputy Minister of Environment Management and Forestry from Coordinating Ministry for Maritime Affairs and Investment of the Republic of Indonesia. Mr. Joko Taimlan, the Director of the Science Policy from the Secretariat of the Convention on Wetland, Ms. Biruni Buti Aripanti, the Research Agency for Research and Innovation Department, Minister of Environment and Forest of Republic of Indonesia. Professor Mr. Gon Bong-ho at Kunsan National University. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am Song Sang-keun, Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries of the Republic of Korea. Thus, today marks much significance in that such bilateral cooperation bears its fruit for the first time. I would like to take today as a chance to introduce carbon neutral policy of the Republic of Korea in order to achieve 2030 NDC and 2050 carbon neutrality and further areas of the bilateral cooperation between the two countries on the ocean-based solution for carbon neutrality, mainly in regard to blue carbon. We are experiencing the most challenging times in every corner of our society. There are our neighbors who suffer greatly from the COVID-19 pandemic. At the same time, there are fishermen and residents of a coastline, as well as marine biodiversity under the threat of climate change. In the midst of such a challenging time, due to the pandemic, IPCC provides new time estimate, which advance 10 years to the previous estimate for the crossing the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold. Such decision made by IPCC recognize the severity of climate change. When reached to the threshold, inevitable scale of threat will be posed to each of the industry in the field of ocean and fisheries, to the coastline, low-lying grounds, the fishery industry, and shipping. The Republic of Korea fully recognizes global aspiration of carbon neutrality, not only at the domestic level, but also at the international level. Korea is the 14th country to legalize vision of 2050 carbon neutrality and the implementation mechanism while resetting its NDC of 2030 to 40%. It is the right time for us to prepare detailed goals and strategy in every sector. In the midst of a big wave going carbon neutral. Now, I would like to give you more of detailed briefing on 2030 reduction goal of greenhouse gas of the Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries of Republic of Korea. For starters, the Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries emitted 4 million tons of greenhouse gas in 2018 alone, which accounts for 0.5% of the total domestic emission of Korea. The figure of 0.5 might sound less major, yet this particular industry carries a huge importance in that it covers transport, fisheries, carbon sink, marine energy, and many others. Thus, against this backdrop, the Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries provide newly set goal, which is much more challenging compared to that Korea as a whole. The Republic of Korea aims to reduce 2.3 million tons of emission in 2030, which is 58% more reduced compared to that in 2018. The key industry on the goal are as follows: shipping, fisheries, marine energy, and blue carbon. First of all, regarding shipping industry, Korea has set its short-term goal to expand the distribution of low carbon vessels such as LNG, and its middle and long-term goal to promote technological development in order to fully commercialize zero carbon vessel powered by hydrogen or ammonia. In particular, not only domestic carriers and cargoes, but also will be successfully transformed into eco-friendly vessels. Building on to such momentum, achieving decarbonization in the international shipping will remain as a top priority of Korea. As of 2020, the Republic of Korea counts heavily for the international shipping with a total shipping of 89 million deadweight ton. Thus, the Korean government recognizes the importance of its active and responsible action in achieving decarbonization with IMO. Secondly, regarding the fishery industry, old vessels will be fully replaced for better performance of fishing boats as well as for zero carbonization, followed by the development and distribution of electronic powered fishing vessels. On top of such effort, the distribution of energy efficient equipment shall be further expanded in fishing farms and seafood factories. The highly energy efficient equipment, such as a heat pump, that is being distributed to the fishing farms and seafood factories, save energy usage, but also help improve the overall productivity according to the industry. In this regard, Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries shall accelerate and expand the distribution of such equipment. Thirdly, MOF will lead the expansion of tidal power, which is proven to be efficient, as well as promote the technical development and the commercialization of wave and the tidal stream power. As part of effort, Korea is developing relevant technology on green hydrogen production in line with marine energy and marine biotechnology in order to lead hydrogen production via utilizing the ocean. Thus, the Korean government will actively discover further agendas, including creating hydrogen port, which produce, stores, and distributes hydrogen, as well as building a marine energy island, which is fully self-sufficient just by utilizing the marine energy. Fourthly, blue carbon. Blue carbon is internationally recognized nature-based carbon sink, along with the forest. Against such a backdrop, the Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries has already taken necessary steps to expand the scope of salt marsh and sugar belt. Particularly speaking, MOF is planning to focus on devising various policies and studies in regard to tide flat, which was designated as the World Natural Heritage by UNESCO last July. To build on to such momentum, MOF has established the first master plan on the management and recovery of the tide flat and continue to implement related policy. In detail, the ministry aims to regenerate salt plants near the tide flat and expand the scope of study and international cooperation to gain international recognition of the tide flat as an official carbon sink. The tide flat in Korea has garnered much attention globally earlier as the Seoul National University published a study suggesting that the tide flat absorbed 260,000 tons of carbon dioxide on annual basis. Recognizing such progress, the Korea government make sure to remain keenly interested in the R&D sport so that a relevant study on the capacity of a tide flat as a carbon sink from home and abroad gain much more attention worldwide. Lastly, I believe the monitoring and forecasting hold much importance in response to climate change. Especially, the ocean is directly exposed to the risk of climate change in the form of rising sea level and warmer water temperature. The ocean can also cause extreme weather, such as a massive typhoon, heat wave, and extreme cold. In this regard, MOF is actively cooperating with the relevant authority like KIOST, Korea Institute of Ocean Science and Technology, to further advance the monitoring and forecasting of the ocean in order to better respond to climate change. As part of our effort, since this February, KIOS successfully opened a marine climate forecast center dedicated to collecting basic information of monitoring and to provide a nationwide forecast service for the general public. In addition to this, under the guidance of MOF, KIOS remains dedicated to forecasting transnation changes of the ocean from the coastline, distant water to the Arctic region, so that it can provide a sophisticated forecast model for long-term benefit. The Republic of Korea suffers rising sea level of 3 millimeters every 30 years. Yet, the past decade accelerated the pace by 20% faster compared to the other 20 years. Media outlets report on coastal erosion day after day, and many of us are experiencing changes in marine ecosystem and the fishing grounds. I believe it is the right time for us to act. Even within the international society, rapid changes in the ocean due to climate change, the global interest in achieving carbon neutrality via the ocean is increasing. Korea is well ready to further discuss on carbon neutrality in the field of ocean with any country across the globe and with international organizations. We wish to act together. Distinguished guests, it is my sincere wish that you have recognized the ocean shall be the key to the response to climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. He introduced not only blue carbon, but also other ocean-based solutions for the carbon neutrality. And as our next, I will invite Ms. Nani Hendiarty, Deputy Minister of Environment Management and Forestry of Coordinating Ministry for Maritime Affairs and Investment of the Republic of Indonesia. And Indonesia has the world's largest mangrove as a blue carbon resources, and Nani will introduce us a mangrove restoration policy in Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Distinguished Mr. Song Sang-kyun, Deputy Minister of the Ministry of the Ocean and Fisheries of the Republic of Korea. Okay. Yeah. Excellent. As also distinguished the speaker. And ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon. In the beginning, I would like to thank you for being inviting in these sessions. I think this is very good event, and this is also we have yesterday talk show at the Indonesian pavilions with together with the Ministry of the Ocean and Fisheries. So we discuss mainstreaming blue carbon to strengthen climate and coastal resilience. And today, in the current pavilion, we are discussing I think more detail in the context of initiative on the coastal blue carbon management policy and also share experience. So both of Indonesia and the Republic of Korea seek future mutual cooperation to reach the net zero emission, especially from the blue carbon. So I would like to share in this good occasion two things following the statement of our Minister Luhut that we already listened from the video recording. So two things about the NDC and also about the mangrove restoration. So first is about NDC. We underline what has been agreed under the Paris Agreement, that each party shall prepare, communicate and maintain its NDC with the aim of achieving the Paris Agreement objective, and that party may at any time adjust its existing national determined contribution with a view to enhancing its level of the ambition. So also I think we all underline that the parties should strive to the formulate and communicate of their communication for so yeah. Yeah, this is for the policy, I think, in related what we are talking now, in differentiated responsibility and respective capability in the light of different national circumstances. So Indonesia has an updated its NDC to increase the climate adaptation and resilience. So Indonesia also ready to reduce emission by 41% in condition of the existence of the sufficient international support. So commitment have been included to strengthen adaptation effort and wetland program including mangrove and peatland. We also do some programs to strengthen the coastal resilience, such as implementation of the ecosystem-based adaptation in the coastal zone development, integrated management of mangrove ecosystem, and also marine pollution control. We have communicated our long-term low emission development strategy to the UNFCCC, which would enable Indonesia to peak its greenhouse gas emission in 2030 and rapidly reduce its emission level to reach a net zero emission in 2060 or sooner. So this is for the first topic, and then the second one is about mangrove management. The government of Indonesia has launched national mangrove map to update the critical area of mangrove based on some criteria. So the first one is mangrove, the existing mangrove with total, now we have new data, it's about 3.36 million hectares that spread out in the 34 provinces of Indonesia. And we have the second criteria is the mangrove habitat potential in Indonesia with 183 hectares. So indicators of the rehabilitation target for existing mangrove are based on the density level and potential mangrove habitat with three approaches, which are restoring, enhancing, and maintaining. So we use satellite data in combination with the ground check data, ground measurement data to produce this one map for mangrove. So we have now very updated information on the mangrove. So the launch of this national mangrove data is intended to serve as a reference for initial or baseline condition in the program planning or policy making towards effective and efficient management. So I think I'm very agree that beside this map, one map mangrove, we are also now starting to develop the system for monitoring. So monitoring is also very important, not only for mangrove but also for the ecosystem. So because we are talking about the ecosystem of coastal, including mangrove and seagrass. So also I think in this good time, yeah, we will also to what we call to share. We just have new regulation on the carbon pricing because this is very fresh. Our president just signed this our regulation. We call it presidential decree. Just on time before our president leave for G20, so it's very new. So under the regulation on the carbon pricing, the potential blue carbon will be managed as a great value from now and next generation to come. Also, I think beside mangrove, we have a seagrass also. So we are currently rehabilitating mangrove in the area about 600,000 hectare until 2024, which is I think the largest in the world. So now we got already we started end of last year, so we have already made it 40,000 hectares. So we will make it in next year faster, because I think because of the pandemic, we have less achievement that we plan, but next year we will have more. So with this the mangrove carbon sequestration of the 4 times, I think we know this compared to the tropical forest. So this will be very huge number of potential for our blue carbon. So in this context, so for our program in the rehabilitation, and also I think it's not only rehabilitation, but we call it mangrove management, because not only to replant but also to maintain that they are can grow good, and also the people living in the coastal area can get the benefit from this program. So we need a cost about 1.65 billion, and about 70%, almost 70% will be used for mangrove plantations, and other percentage used for the other purpose, such also how to manage maintain this plant with community base. This is community based empowerment. And also the government of Indonesia has a medium term development plan 2020 until 2024. There are 7 national priorities in the document, and the climate change issue, including mangrove, are included in our national priority number 6, building the environment, improving disaster resilience and climate change. So the mangrove rehabilitation program in 2021 are also supported from our regular national program. We call it National Economic Recovery Program, to support our community from the pandemic. Also for mangrove restoration program. So we get support also from the private sector and association through this CCSR program, and also with our strategic partner. We have 2 MOUs with the other countries and then strategic partner. So Indonesia's implementation of the strategy of mangrove restoration, including participation of other stakeholders, like beside private sector, we have academia also, and others. Also, we are working in the law enforcement for the forestry sector, socialization of the benefit for mangrove ecosystem, and to all society, research and development, and the also important things that we also have a program improving the community economy through the process of mangrove products. So long-term and a consistent funding from all stakeholders as well as other funding alternative. I think we are focusing on this also, and then from the utilization of the mangrove from the carbon credit. So we accurate mangrove maps and also establish the mangrove working group. So we have a national task force for this mangrove management program with 5 targets. So the all target that I have been mentioned in the before. So therefore, I think this is very important and strategic that we would like to have collaboration, a stronger collaboration with the Republic of the Korea for specific in the mangrove program, related also with the research project on blue carbon, mangrove center for the nursery, and also mangrove product. So to conclude, that we are glad if our cooperation in mangrove project could be followed up soon after the COP26 end. So thank you again. Thank you very much for the Ministry of the Ocean and Fisheries of the Republic of Korea. And thank you for all the speakers, expert participants who were engaged on this amazing session. So thank you very much. Kamsahamnida. Thank you.
Then, as a last presenter of this session, I'll invite Professor Bong Kwon of Kunsan National University in Korea. Professor Kwon has been leading scientific research to identify the potential of carbon sequestration in the tidal flat for many years. Today, he will introduce the role of tidal flat to increase coastal carbon stock.
Good afternoon. This is Bong Kwon from Kunsan National University. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to Song Sang-keun, the Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries of Republic of Korea, and Nani Hendarti, Deputy Minister of Coordinating Ministry for Maritime Affairs and Investment of Republic of Indonesia, for giving me the speech chance of this side event. My speech title is The Role of Tidal Flat, GAPR, to increase coastal carbon stock. Here, GAPR is a Korean word for tidal flat, which was registered as a World Natural Heritage Site in this year. A blue carbon research in Korea was conducted with the support of Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries of Korea, and was supervised by the COEM, the Korea Marine Environment Corporation, and Seoul National University, and Kunsan National University, and other institutions participate jointly. I will present in this order. I will give an introduction and tell you about the result of research on carbon storage capacity of the tidal flat, GAPR, and finally tell you about the new blue carbon. The climate change is no longer a regional or local problem, but has become a global problem for mankind, and each country is declaring carbon neutrality. To overcome the climate catastrophe, we must reduce greenhouse gases by 45% by 2030. Globally, the goal of lowering the global temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius or less has been set. But the sixth IPCC report warns that the rate of global warming is accelerating. Last year, the Korean government also declared the carbon neutrality, and 2 days ago, here in Glasgow, the president of Republic of Korea announced that the greenhouse gas reduction target would be reduced by 40% by 2030 to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. In the marine sector, about 4 million, that's mistype, 4 million tons of greenhouse gases must be reduced, and we plan to announce carbon neutrality roadmap in the marine sector in this year. Among them, blue carbon occupies an important portion, about 1 million tons of carbon dioxide. As you know, blue carbon refers to carbon absorbed and stored in coastal ecosystem, that is mangrove, salt marshes, and seagrass field. I heard that Indonesia has a large area of mangroves that account for 23% of the world. It is also known that the mangrove absorbs and stores the most carbon among blue carbon. 83% of the global carbon cycle is circulated through the ocean. Coastal habitat covers only 2% of total ocean area, but account for approximately half of the total carbon sequestered in the ocean sediment. Unfortunately, there are no mangroves in Korea yet, but there are tidal flats about 2,500 square kilometers. Recently, tidal flats in Korea, Gapol, were listed as a UNESCO World Natural Heritage Site. Therefore, we studied with interest in the carbon absorption capacity of tidal flat as well as salt marshes and seagrass. Sorry. From now on, I will present a study on blue carbon in Korean tidal flat. Our research team, conducted a nationwide survey on carbon stock and carbon absorption capacity in 21 tidal flats in Korea over the past 4 years. Based on the field survey data, carbon storage amount and carbon absorption rate of the entire tidal flats were estimated by using the remote sensing technique to identify the characteristic of each tidal flat and extend it to all tidal flats. It was found that 30 million tons of carbon is stored in Korean tidal flat, and about 260,000 tons of carbon dioxide is stored annually. This is the result of Korean blue carbon research conducted with support from Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries for the past 5 years. Salt marshes have been found that absorbs about 0.6 tons of carbon per year, and tidal flats up to 0.5 tons, and seagrass up to 1.1 tons of carbon per year, which are similar to or slightly lower than the coefficients suggested by IPCC. From now on, I'll introduce several studies carbon stocks in tidal flat conducted in other countries. In Japan, not only tidal flat, the sediment, but also the amount of carbon contained in organisms such as microalgae, bivalves, and crabs were calculated as carbon storage. In China, carbon storage in tidal flat was estimated based on survey from data only 1/12 Korea 21. As a result, 78 teragram of carbon is stored in the tidal flat, which account for 80% of total carbon storage. Another Chinese study, this is another China study, comparison with tidal flat and other blue carbon habitat. The carbon storage in tidal flat around the world is reported to be comparable to that the salt marshes. Considering these cases, research on the carbon storage capacity of tidal flat has been active recently. It is still in the early stage, but through the continuous research, tidal flats will be internationally recognized as a blue carbon. Unfortunately, over the past 40 years, the yellow sea tidal flat has disappeared by 1.1% per year, and the value of ecosystem service value has a loss of $8 billion per year. In particular, the carbon stored in tidal flat sediment is being released into atmosphere. Restoring tidal flat is important, but not reclamation of tidal flat is also be a very important task. In addition, the Korean Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries announced plans to restore about 4.5 square kilometers of tidal flats over the next 5 years and restore about 660 square kilometers of salt marsh by 2050. MWF is also planning to implement a large project to increase carbon absorption by restoring coastal wetland for 5 years from next year and to find new blue carbon. Among them, the key project is to find the new blue carbon habitat, including tidal flats. Around the world, research is being conducted to find new blue carbon. Tidal flats and subtidal sediment and macroalgae are being discussed as a candidate for blue carbon. Among them, Korea is making effort to obtain international certification for tidal flat that has already been certified for carbon absorption. For the past 5 years, we have been collaborating with various experts in various countries on blue carbon. Blue Carbon Cooperation in Indonesia Blue Carbon Cooperation with Indonesia started 3 years ago when the Minister of Ocean and Fisheries of the Republic of Korea visited Indonesia as an opportunity. I think the joint seminar yesterday and today is the expansion of that. I hope that Blue Carbon Cooperation will continue through exchange between two government and scientific groups in the future. This is Gangwa tidal flat, a typical Korean tidal flat. I hope that next seminar can be held together in the tidal flat of Korea. And conclude my speech. Thank you.
Then, thank you so much for all speakers for your very brilliant presentation. And now we further discussion. I'd like to invite our speakers and panelists to the front seat. Yeah. Now we'll talk about the way to strengthen the contribution of blue carbon to meet the carbon neutrality as well as NDCs through lessons learned in country or global level. Also, I'd like to ask what will be necessary for further cooperation on blue carbon between Korea and Indonesia. And importantly, we have two more special panelists for the discussion. And Joko Taimlander, he is the Director for Science and Policy, Secretariat of the Convention on Wetlands. He has over 25 years of experience working in sustainable development, environmental protection, and climate change in several international organizations such as UNEP and IUCN, etc. And the other expert is Dr. Bonnie Budi Arifanti, who is a researcher of Agency for Research and Innovation Department, the Ministry of Environmental Management and Forestry of the Republic of Indonesia. She got her PhD at the Oregon University and majored in wetland ecology. And before start, as far as I know, the Ramsar Convention strives to conserve the important wetland resources. So, Joko, could you briefly introduce Ramsar's or international trends to link blue carbon to the climate change policies? Can you?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Deputy Minister Gunani. Nice to see you again, and thank you for having me here on this panel. The Convention on Wetlands, by definition, encompasses all blue carbon ecosystems because the definition for wetland contained in the Convention is such that it encompasses mangroves, seagrass beds, salt marshes, and also tidal flats. So it's enshrined within the Convention, its immediate relevance to blue carbon ecosystems. It's very important to note that the commitments made by the 172 contracting parties to the Convention entail designating and managing wetlands of international importance that are Ramsar sites. It entails wise use of all wetlands within their territories, and then of course international cooperation in relation to those two other obligations and towards good wetland management. All of this as a contribution towards sustainable development. So this is the Convention itself as it was adopted 50 years ago. We celebrate our 50th anniversary this year. There's 2,400 plus Ramsar sites in the world. They cover more than 254 million hectares, and 995 of these are coastal wetlands. So a very large part of those coastal wetlands include blue carbon ecosystems. So that in itself establishes the effort in relation to blue carbon systems under the Convention. There's also a range of resolutions adopted by parties to the Convention that specifically address blue carbon ecosystems and climate change. We can go back quite far in history in relation to climate change. I'll emphasize a few of the more recent aspects that are covered. For example, there was a resolution adopted at our last conference of parties which effectively encourages parties to update national wetlands inventories for the purpose of estimating carbon storage and fluxes in wetlands, including in particular blue carbon ecosystems and peat ecosystems, and on that basis to update national greenhouse gas inventories. There's a resolution that encourages parties to include coastal ecosystems in and relevant Ramsar sites in nationally determined contributions and other climate change related planning frameworks, whether related to mitigation or adaptation or disaster risk reduction and so on. So the parties to the Convention have clearly recognized that this system offers opportunities both in terms of mitigation, adaptation, disasters, in addition to the other ecosystem services that wetlands provide. There's an explicit target on increasing the inclusion of blue carbon ecosystems among Ramsar sites in the network of Ramsar sites within our current strategic plan. So also there's some further recognition, and basically, in short, there's already quite a lot of attention to these systems within this international framework that addresses issues of management and wise use, that addresses site level protection and restoration for achieving climate outcomes. At this point, I also want to draw to your attention a briefing note very recently published by the Scientific and Technical Review Panel of the Convention, specifically on blue carbon. It's on our website. I strongly encourage you to look at that. It's a really good articulation of the Convention and blue carbon systems. If you allow me a few more minutes, I can expand on this, but perhaps I should let other panelists have a say first. So let me stop there. Thank you.
At the first topic of discussion, I'd like to give a question. That is, which policy approaches can expand the contribution of nature-based solutions, such as blue carbon, to NDCs? And Deputy Minister Song, can you give your idea first?
In regard to first question, the Republic of Korea has successfully announced its scenario on 2050 national carbon neutrality and ambitious new target of 2030 NDC, with involving the various forms of blue carbon, such as tidal flat, which are not yet designated by IPCC for expanding contribution of nature-based solution. At the same time, Korea established the master plan on tidal flat, respectively, conducting expanded scope of the government-driven projects such as tidal flat regeneration. It is a time-consuming process to apply new blue carbon as a means of reducing greenhouse gas inventory at the working level in IPCC. Yet, the Korean government stays determined to fully support on the discovering new blue carbon resources in the aspect of finance and administration, as well as identifying scientific evidence on carbon absorption at the national level. In particular, it is my sincere hope that joint research takes place with the Indonesian counterpart for better understanding on the blue carbon. By jointly cooperating with Indonesia on the research in regard to planting environment of coastal wetland across the globe, as well as the carbon absorption. Thank you.
Thank you. And any other comments from the panelists? Jakar, do you have?
Thank you. Yeah. In terms of policy approaches, I just wanted to come back to this topic of international designation to protect, because many times this offers a recognition together with national instruments that really sort of safeguard outcomes, perhaps to a greater extent. And what we've seen with mangrove systems, this is included in the brief I just mentioned, but the global loss of mangroves at the moment is about 2% per year. Within Ramsar sites, there's still a modest loss of mangroves on average, but it's one order of magnitude less than the global rates of mangrove loss. So these designations are important to effectively halt loss and to protect the carbon that is there, to prevent emission of the stored carbon in sediments and so on. And so a policy approach is to really make sure that we build on and leverage the commitments and the modalities that exist, because we do have a lot that we can work with. And I think when we make the most of it, the results can also be sooner and probably longer lasting.
Thank you. Nani, do you have?
This one, thank you. Thank you. I would like to add from the Indonesia governments. So we, under the NDC, we have 5 sectors. contribution to the NDC. So number one is forestry. Forestry contributes 17%. This is number one. So after that, energy and so on. So under the forestry, actually mangrove is already included, but only from the above, what canopy, from the canopy. So in the update NDC, we put it stronger message that we are going to increase our contributions from the mangrove, I mean peatland, yeah, but including mangrove uh, in the other part, so below the ground. So as we know, I think I think we have experts here that under below the ground that's having more uh, capacity to storage the carbon. So then, but we still have homework. Our homework is MRV. So I think we would like to also make it to accelerate to have MRV for specific for the mangrove below ground. So this is our target. Beside also, I think very. I mean, we are also concerned that the mangrove area we'll keep it as a mangrove area. This is not what to call it, convert to other purpose, because I think we are still thinking how this regulation. So I think we have already had such like before, yeah. So no conversion from mangrove to others. So we will keep with the law enforcement. I think this is very important also. Yeah, and conservation together with other programs such like tourism, ecotourism and others. So the people who are living there will be also involved and then get a benefit. So this is our policy. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And then can you go next question? Next question. Yeah. Sorry. Then the next question is conserving or restoring coastal ecosystem is a major action to promote blue carbon. And then what were the obstacles in implementing ecosystem conservation or restoration, and how did you overcome those obstacles? So can you, Danny, can you, do you? Okay, then Bonnie, yeah, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Indonesia is now committing, to restore our degraded mangroves for about 600,000 hectares, as what has been said by Miss Nani, Ibu Nani. And of course, 600,000 hectares is a very ambitious target. And we know that it's not easy, to plant such a huge amount of mangroves within 4 years, only in 4 years, from 2021 up to 2024. So there are, of course, many obstacles that we would find in the field, in particular, because as you know, we have seen that in the field, our mangroves have been, which belong to government status area, are being encroached and being converted into aquaculture ponds. And those aquaculture ponds, once they are not productive anymore, they are being abandoned. And those abandoned ponds, from the government side point of view, those abandoned ponds should be replanted, by new mangroves. But in the field, it's not so easy because these community, they think that this land still belongs to them. So we found a lot of land tenure conflicts that needs to be resolved before we can replant new mangrove or restore the degraded mangroves. And then another problem is that we also need to, we have mud flats, probably, I don't know whether mudflats are the same like tidal flats, but usually because we couldn't find any clean and clear area to plant the mangroves, usually we plant mangroves in the tidal flats, which in the mud flats, sorry, which are usually it's actually mud flats. It's not planted with any vegetation, but because we couldn't find any bare area that could be planted, so we plant those mangrove areas in mud flats, and those are what do you call it, problems that should be resolved. And also we tend to plant the same species, Rhizophora species. We know that not all mangrove areas is suitable to be planted by Rhizophora. Mangrove have ecosystem zones. They have vegetation zones with different salinity, sedimentation depth, and so on. So if we plant Rhizophora, because Rhizophora is easy to be planted because it has like a very long propagule, so it's easy to be planted. But usually, if the Rhizophora plants are planted in unsuitable ecosystem, they will not grow. So those are like biophysical things and also socio-economic problems that needs to be resolved in the restoring the degraded mangroves. Okay, that's for me. Thank you.
I think very similar problems in Korea. So I'd like then ask a comment from Song following Jarkar. And Jarkar, you talk.
Regarding Korean case, marine protected area has been monitored and managed by the Korean government, and the polluted tide flat due to the abandoned salt pond have been transformed into the natural tide flat, securing more blue carbon resources. Yet, a few local residents backlashed against the designation of MPA as a concern that fishing activity and the local development may be hindered. There are also some cases where controversial debates over the compensation, also pond owned by the private sector, took place, causing delay in biodiversity restoration. In this regard, Korea is sparing no effort to raise the public awareness on the importance of MPA, not only for preservation of marine biodiversity, but also promotion of the management and increase on the future fishery resources. In addition, Korean government aims to achieve a global goal on biodiversity, expand the scope of MPA, and conduct a constant restoration of a tidal ecosystem by letting the public know the urgency of the climate change, as well as advancing the related policies. Particularly speaking, the Korean government jointly established the consultative body with the civil society in regard to the tidal flat regions, which were recently designated as a World Natural Heritage.
Thank you. And Jarkar?
Thank you very much. Only to mention that through the work under the Convention on Wetlands, there's actually quite a lot of guidance and guidelines, supporting documents, technical knowledge that can be applied in restoration and protection of blue carbon ecosystems. And of course, it always needs to be very conscious of local conditions on the ground. I think Indonesia has some excellent experiences to share in this, and also many of those challenges. And one thing I wanted to emphasize here in relation to restoration is that there often is a certain opportunity cost. It displaces certain uses by creating new benefits. But it's important to acknowledge that those uses that are being displaced, those people who have to be subject to a certain change, also need to be very much part of the equation of this restoration, and also need to be part of the financial aspects of a restoration initiative. And I think many countries are seeing different ways of doing that. Thank you.
Thank you for all the comments. And then now I'd like to go to the last question for our discussion. And the last issue is currently IPCC recognizes only 3 coastal ecosystems such as mangrove forests, salt marshes, and seagrass meadows as a carbon sink. So then what will be our next candidate or next blue carbon resources? And I would like to listen about that issue from Bonnie and Kwon. Dr. Kwon, do you have first?
You can finish.
I already presentation in this last presentation. Non-vegetative tidal flat or mud flat also store significant amount of carbon. I know that Indonesia has about 1.4 million hectare of mud flat, and on the similar basis, subtidal sediment may contain a significant amount of carbon. And we also believe that the research on marine macroalgae and the starfish is necessary to finding the new blue carbon. But the finding of new blue carbon is very challenging, but we have to start and we have to work hard for new blue carbon. That's all. Thank you.
Good. And how about Indonesia? Do you looking for other blue carbon resources in your country or?
Okay, thank you. I think this discussion is very interesting because Korea is, I think, leading the way for finding new blue carbon. Where we know that IPCC only recognizes 3 ecosystems, blue carbon ecosystems, and I know that there are some debate on whether we can include tidal flats into blue carbon ecosystems. But I think if research can show that that tidal flats has the potential, to, as what you have researched so far, that it really has the potential to sequester carbon, and I think there are also literatures, references, articles that it is equal to the tidal marsh, the carbon burial rate of the macroalgae is almost equal to the tidal marsh. So I think we need to define what is the fate of the blue of the carbon from the tidal flats. Is it the same like the organic carbon that is come from mangroves, for example? We know the organic carbon from mangrove ecosystems, they largely comes from the little fall, from detritus, from the allochthonous and detritus, that is coming from this ecosystem, and that those organic carbon are deposited, for a whole for long time, in the sediment. And how about tidal flats? Is the organic carbon the same? Is the organic carbon from the tidal flats are the same that is coming from the mangroves? If, for example, you can show, that is equal, is this more or less the same, and it has almost the same capacity to sequester, CO2, for example, as the organic carbon from the 3 blue carbon ecosystems. I think this will lead to a new enlightenment, new approaches, in seeing the blue carbon ecosystem. So I think we need more research on this one. We know that there are not so many research yet conducted on this tidal flats potential for blue carbon ecosystem. So I think we need more research on this one. And if we can show through scientific research that this is a really potential carbon, I think we should negotiate with IPCC to include this as the 4th blue carbon ecosystem. Thank you.
Then any other comments from the panelists on the additional blue carbon resources? Yeah, Nani.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think this was very good explanation already. But we are in discussing also now. Now we are working. This is for Indonesia case, for Indonesia case related with the blue carbon. I think we are working intensively now with the mangrove. But I think we see that Indonesia also has a big potential for the seagrass. Seagrass. So I think will come later after the mangrove. So we are, yeah, because I think we should start with the inventory and then next something like following the step. Yeah. So I think this is what Indonesia, I think, plan to go, yeah, in the blue carbon context. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, Joker, you have the floor.
Thank you. Only two reflections on this, and one is, of course, that climate change is a very big challenge, and so we should not disregard potential tools in the fight against climate change. So yes, by all means, we should look into this. I think that's clear. At the same time, we already have good knowledge on some of these systems and an ability to really implement. And I think some countries have put strong blue carbon actions into their NDCs, for example, but actually, based on the reports just before this COP, maybe only 21% of the NDCs actually mention wetlands in the context of mitigation actions, and that's not so many under land use and land use change and forestry. And there are very, very few explicit targets in terms of area protected or area restored or emissions prevented, sequestration ensured, and so on. So I think there's a lot to be done in terms of putting to use what we already know, while we still develop these new tools that we can deploy in our fight against climate change. And secondly, around IPCC, the wetlands supplement, which is of course very important here for national greenhouse gas accounts. I don't know to what extent it can and can't be applied to tidal marshes, but it might be worth starting with that. And of course, IPCC will from next year, I believe, adopt a new work program. So if there is a desire for IPCC to actually look into some matter further, then there is a very clear timeline. And of course, it's the parties that ultimately adopt the plans for the IPCC as well. So that might be one thing to also address. Thank you.
Thank you all for the valuable opinions and comments. Then now I'd like to wrap up. And I think blue carbon is very important resources to be conserved, not only in terms of carbon reservoir, but also in terms of disaster prevention and biodiversity and various provisional services, etc. And human and the earth will be sustainable when we live and go forward with nature, I think. And I thank you all for the good comments and discussions for our side event. And as a wrap up, I'd like to wrap up. And I'd like to invite Mr. Song for the wrap up.
I am grateful that side event between Korea and Indonesia has been a great success in the midst of COVID-19, a challenging time for all of us. In particular, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to the Deputy Minister Nani and Ms. Biruni from the government of Indonesia for your presence. And my special thanks goes to Professor Kwon Bong-ho and Mr. Jaka Temlen for your engagement. Based on what has been discussed today, I recognize that the majority of the EU acknowledge the potential of ocean in response to climate change. I believe today served as a valuable opportunity to share new insight on the discovery and the utilization of new blue carbon resources, including the tide flood. At the same time, today reminds us that we still have a long way to go, given that there are limited usage of a national greenhouse inventory, such as IPCC absorbance certificate, and many other challenges, including cooperation with the civil society. The Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries of the Republic of Korea remains active to conduct transnational research and utilization on blue carbon in cooperation with Indonesia and Ramsar. Apart from this, Korea will spare no effort to be the leading country in achieving carbon neutrality in the field of shipping, fishery, port, and marine energy. Once again, I would like to extend my deepest appreciation to all the participants for your presence in the midst of COVID-19 and speakers. Wish you the best luck to your future journey. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And I conclude the side event. But I'm really sorry for the question and answer session. So if you have any questions, please use this time. We have about 15 minutes, but freely, directly with the speakers or panelists. I'm so sorry for the time.
고생했어요. 우리 상품 전달해야 될 건데. 사진도 찍고.